And so if you understand Bitcoin, you're inherently bullish because you understand it. So I don't know if I need to give a particular reason be quite honest.
It's whatever the fuck has you jazzed at the moment. And that can include what you're building. Like if you want to just drop a CNBC style rant on fuck everybody and fuck the system, you can go do that right now, all you want, whatever you think, man.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to shill what I'm building. Why am I bullish Bitcoin? I think the beauty of Bitcoin lives within its simplicity, in that we were able to engineer collectively as a community software that can execute on what's been pretty well known as the properties and characteristics of money that would be able to retain and store value and appreciate against shittier assets, shittier collectibles, shittier nation state issued currencies. And it's the design of the system. And if you can create a monetary asset that has known issuance, known monetary policy, fixed in supply, no reliance on any central authority, cannot be co-opted by emotional human beings. In theory, it's going to pump forever, measured against particular shitty pieces of paper. And piggybacking off what Michael said and why he's bullish with the institutional wall of capital, I'm just going to overlay some very simple logic on to why that's happening. And so when you think about the United States is in debt, and everyone's in debt though, and that's just kind of a function and an output of the system that's been accruing and have been built over the last God knows how long. Usually there are two options when you're in debt. Typically, if you're just like a normal pleb, one, you pay it back like a good man, like a citizen, like an honest man, and the other is you default on it. Usually, is the United States going to pay back the debt they're in? No, it's not an option. Is the United States going to default on it? Are they going to call BlackRock and say, oh, all those government bonds you guys have been buying and all the money? Sorry, I kind of fucked it up. I gambled I put it all on red at the casino, and I'm defaulting on the loan. That's not an option either. And so you'd probably be perplexed and be like, what the fuck are they going to do with this debt? Except they have a cheat code where they have a third option. They can just print more of the money. And then instead of becoming the lender of last resort, they're the buyer of last resort. And what you're experiencing today is unprecedented macro environment where asset inflation is scorchingly high. The only thing that's going as parabolic as Bitcoin is asset inflation. And that's because, Bitcoin is a proxied measurement and an index on asset inflation, probably the most accurate one. And so what's happening is you've got a world that's in debt, that cannot pay it back, cannot default on it, and has no choice but to pump Bitcoin. They have no choice. And whether they know it or not, they have to print more dollars, and those dollars have to flood into harder assets, whether that's real estate, whether that's precious metals, whether that's Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is designed to accrue against this exact macro environment. For those that have been around for a decade, this is how we built this fucking thing. Houses don't have every 4 years. Like Chicago real estate's not having every 4 years. In the year 2141, it's not going to be mathematically impossible for me to buy the fucking penthouse with a women's closet in it and build another floor on top of this building.
It might be though.
In 2141, it would be not if Ken Griffin waves $250 million in someone's face. They're going to go build that. It is mathematically impossible to mint another Bitcoin that exceeds 21 million. Real estate doesn't have every fucking 4 years. Gold issuance is totally outside of our control. If engineering gets good enough, to Michael's point, we're gonna we're gonna go mine the fuck out of gold if the incentives are there. And so, no, you're living in a world where, and we all knew this was coming, the only way out is to print your way out. and inflate assets around you. And Bitcoin was designed to be the hardest of those assets and to appreciate against what is an absolute mess until it collapses. And so why am I bullish? I don't know. I read the white paper. I remember sitting in the kitchen with my dad when I was 18 years old, and he explained it to me. I'm like, okay, so we just are going to, as a family, buy a lot of this thing and just be rich as fuck and watch everything else collapse. Got it. Understood. Bullish for the rest of my life until I die. And that's why I'm bullish.
I love it. And to your point on housing, like there was just an article the other day. I'm in Canada here, and the average price of a house in Canada is now right in around $750,000. The average price of a house in Canada. It's fucking insane. What average person has that money to put even a down payment at like 5% on a house like that? Mostly nobody. It's people that are using it as a hedge against what they know is shitty currency. But I digress. I'm going to pass this, given what your topic was. I think, Michael Saylor, considering you've based your entire treasury strategy on this, you might have a few words to say on what Jack just detailed.
Well, I guess based on macroeconomics, we should all be more bullish that there's remarkable consensus amongst every government on earth and every politician on earth that interest rates should stay low and monetary policy should stay loose. And I think we're starting to see over the past month indications of clear inflation, right? We saw inflation in the commodities. For housing, we're just starting to get the year-over-year stats for housing over the past 8 weeks. I saw 11% up. I saw another stat that average house was up 15% in the U.S. I wonder what the housing prices are at in Canada. I saw another stat that said they were up 18%, and then
Canada.
It's 30% here.
Up
You guys
30%.
have the Canadian pesos fucked, man.
Yeah, it's actually the Canadian moose shekel is what the correct term is.
Oh my God.
So, the conventional macroeconomic wisdom has been we're going to wait for CPI inflation before we agree there's any inflation. But I think that over the last 12 months, we've won over a lot of the macro hedge funds and the gold bugs, and we're going to win over the rest of the gold bugs. And, Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller and Bill Miller and now Ray Dalio and the like. I think we're winning them over to the point of view that monetary inflation trumps consumer inflation. And I also think that mainstream media that has been saying there is no inflation, in the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm sensing a change in the narrative across mainstream newspapers and television that they're acknowledging that it looks like there's some inflation, even amongst the most conservative indexes. And that's probably going to put the inflation issue on the forefront of everybody's mind, and all the conventional investors that have been waiting for signs of inflation before they do something. Maybe this next 6 months, I think maybe we start to see them looking for their quote unquote inflation hedge, and they come to life.
I love it. The chat is shouting at me to toss it to Jeff. So Jeff, do you have any add-ons here?
So when you talk about this housing is for instance, and if you go back to before this recent time with staggering amount of stimulus, remember over the last 20 years, there was $185 trillion of extra stimulus globally. That stimulus is why houses go up, right? So the only question you have to ask is there going to be another 185 trillion over the next 10 years? And if you realize that the market has to, if you understand the real macro, they exist to kind of build on what some of the others have said. We live in an inflationary system that there is no way out. If you let it fail, the counterparty risk falls all the way down to the sand, and there is no money backing it. So so every bank collapses, every institution, every government collapses. So you cannot let deflation happen. But we live in a technological driven world where we get more for less because of technology. So those two forces are fighting against each other, and so no matter what happens from now on, the existing system cannot get out of it, and it has to keep printing no matter what, because the minute it stops, everything unwinds. So that's what the existing system looks like. And so it's kind of when we talk about price of Bitcoin and pumping of Bitcoin, I could give a fuck. Because in general, Bitcoin will go up against every other asset class forever. But you're measuring in a fiat currency when we're talking about price of Bitcoin, and kind of reinforcing that houses will come down against Bitcoin, everything will come down against Bitcoin forever, because that's the natural. Technology brings prices lower, and the only reason why prices are going higher is because the system is manipulating prices to go higher forever. If that manipulation were to stop, you would see the truth.